Yeah, there's a quote from Stephen Eliot in the book that really spoke to me. It said, "People who want to be good can do awful things in the name of being good." You know,
Yeah.
and that there's like this very destructive morality that somehow I'm doing the right thing by canceling this stranger. And meanwhile, there's a human being on the other end of that who's like, wait, what's going on? I mean, your story and Stephen's story and other people too, where you look at it, because one of the things that happens when there's this cancellation wave, and I'd say there are three types. One is like, oh, like that person clearly is guilty, and like maybe it hasn't happened in a court of law, but I'm pretty confident, Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein, people like that. You're like very very glad that
I mean, they
that
both went to court. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, eventually they both went to court and were found guilty. And they're just like, oh, it's fine. But even before they were to court, we're like, I'm pretty confident on that one. you know, and
I
then there's
struggle with that idea, by the way, because, for example, Kevin Spacey, he was acquitted 3 times, right? Because there were 3 trials, one in New York. In the New York trial, he was found not guilty. There was another one where the charges were dropped because the witness last minute decided not to testify. And then the third one in the UK where he was found not guilty. In the minds of the public, he is guilty. And it's hard to get over that because look, courts don't always find, there's complications that arise, right? The burden of proof, and so even when somebody is acquitted in court, in the
often the
court of
damage has
public
been done,
opinion.
that's really so. I and this is in your book too. Like I generally agree with the principle. Just assume everyone's innocent until they're proven guilty, and that's codified in the American legal system, where it's like presumption of innocence. It is problematic. You're right that sometimes people like me just look at it and be like, oh, that dude definitely
No, it's human
like
nature. I do this too, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
not. Yeah.
Then there's like the multitude of gray area cases, and then there are the cases where it's like, oh, that's completely messed up, and that person either did nothing wrong in the case of it sounds like Stephen Elliott, or in your case where it was like completely innocuous, and you're like, hey, I mean, your story would get someone riled up because it's one of those stories of no good deed goes unpunished. It's like, let me get this straight. I run a job board for women to find jobs in media. I'm doing it as a volunteer. People like it. It's like happy. And then I'm getting pilloried for what? Like letting someone, post a job that some people oppose on, political grounds.
Yeah.
So there's like this, and what happens to most people, unfortunately, is they look at this and just say like, just keep me out of it. Glad it's not me. and as, and,
100%. That's
yeah,
what
that
most people do.
they have like different opinions. Now I agree with your standards of like, look, like first, let's be more open and forgiving, and less judgmental. I certainly think that the online cancel dynamic is very, very problematic because there's like a bloodthirstiness and pettiness. And it's like, hey, let's destroy this person who, again, is a human being on the other end of it. But like, we're just going to essentially dehumanize them for the purpose of this and attack them and try and destroy their career. And then we're going to forget about it 2 months, 3 months later. And then like some places that person's career is still destroyed if they work in a lot of fields. I think of the most unforgiving fields in this particular domain, I'd say media and academia are like very, very high on the list. And because
Very
of that,
much so.
people in those environments are the most afraid.
And it's weird too, because those should be the most free environments, right? You should be able to say stupid things and explore ideas and stumble, and you should be able to you really examine things, whether in academia but also in media. You should be able to have the difficult conversations, but it's become so, and I was noticing that for very long before. I was already quite critical of the media landscape because I was noticing this consensus culture that I also talk about in terms of science. But this idea, like, you can't look at a story in a different perspective. You have to use this kind of language, and it's nobody tells you you have to write a story this way. I think people who aren't in media, they sort of assume that you get marching orders, and that doesn't happen. It's more so that that if you cross the line in a certain way, your story is not going to be accepted, right? It's modeling. And then that you have to use certain language and sort of inclusive language. And so you are ultimately it's the tribe, it's the culture, and you have to fit in the culture. And it's just the same thing like with the bullies, right? They go at you because you somehow went outside of their consensus, their group, and that to them is very upsetting. It's one thing for me to say, hey, I don't know, you deny the Holocaust. eh, Maybe I want to talk to you about it, but maybe not. Maybe and maybe your breath stinks and I don't like to be so close to you. Whatever it is, right? That you feel like you don't want to associate with a person. But it's a completely different thing for a whole big group of people to decide, well, we don't agree with this point here, and we're going to go and we're going to destroy this person's life. And it's a mob, and it's a power. And somebody said to me in an interview, and I thought that I reflected on that because I thought it was a really good point. What is the point of this mob's behavior to cancel you? What is the ultimate outcome of that? Okay, so you lose your job. Okay, you lose your job. What do you do? How do you feed yourself? So ultimately, it's almost like they're trying to kill you in a way. They might not be thinking it through that way. I don't think they are,
Well, there
but
was
that's
one
what
case
happens.
where an academic took his own life, and then
Yeah.
there wasn't exactly like, oh wow, like we went too far. I mean, there were some people that were more like serves them right. I mean,
A
again,
lot of
it's
people.
yeah, there's like a bloodthirstiness again to this that is very, very dehumanizing.
Well, and the behavior is dehumanizing, right? It's not just people saying, listen, I disagree with what you said because A, B, and C. And this is what I do, by the way, when I disagree with someone, and I often disagree with people. But what they do is like, no, let's call you names, let's dehumanize you, let's do bad things to you. That's not the behavior of anybody who's just disagreeing.
Well, I think you were called a white supremacist, and that's one of like the dehumanizing labels where it's like, well, now that I've
Yeah.
slapped this on you, then we don't have to listen to anything you say because who wants to listen to a white supremacist?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a ridiculous one because, white supremacists kind of hate me for obvious reasons, being Jewish and all. However, it shouldn't even matter what I am or not. Like, you cannot just stick a label to someone over something like this. And people do it all the time. And they do it because people care about these labels, including me. Look, like somebody like me doesn't want to be called a racist or all these things because it's, I don't want to be a racist, right? And that's the person that they're hurting, right? They're not hurting people who are like, yeah, I'm a racist and proud of
Oh,
it,
this
which
is
by the
one of
way,
the
they're,
entire like no good deed goes unpunished thing. It's like they can only hurt you if you're close enough to like the particular tribe and whatnot for it all to hurt. But one of the problems is that it ends up pushing people into the other corner, and then it's like, wait, whoever's attacking me, fuck you. I'm now on the opposite of whatever whatever side you're on. Which again,
that
in a
happens a
two sided
lot.
thing, it does. I mean, I really appreciate people who get attacked and then still have like a greater humanity about it.